John,
Okay,
I saw the missed call. I
trustees,
called you back.
you are live, you are recording, phone lines are open, you are good to go.
Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular trustee meeting of February 28th, and I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
Flag,
of the
United States of America, and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
visible for liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Arlene, can you do roll call, please?
Certainly. John Alfred. Francis Bach.
Here.
David Cataletto.
Here.
Ben Dollinger.
Here.
Tim Garneau. Jim Grimes, who just logged in. Okay. Mike Martinson.
Here.
Susan McGraw-Keever. And Bill Taylor.
Here.
And Allison is also here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Start off with public comment. I believe we have Dr. Robert Tiemann and Barley Dunn, and they have a request for South Fork Sea Farmers for a permit to install a self-sustaining oyster reef in Acabanic Harbor. Dr. Tiemann, how are you tonight?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good.
There we go.
Barley? Oh, you're not?
He's waiting for his video to set up.
Welcome, Bob.
How you doing? Thanks for
Good.
coming down to the
Welcome.
site the other day, Dave.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was informative. Glad I went.
All right, John, do you want to?
Sure. I mean, I'll just review where we are at this point. We at the last meeting we talked about this, and the DEC is reviewing the application for the oyster reef in Acabanic Creek near the Springs General Store, and we need to make a decision on which of the proposed sites that the South Sea Farmers suggested might be the spot that they would like to put the oyster reef. And we had some discussion about their favored site, which was fairly close to the end of Landing Lane, maybe 150 yards north of the end of Landing Lane. And there were some concerns or some additional information that we needed to glean about what moorings and duck blinds might be in the area that might conflict with the oyster reef. And we met with Dr. Tiemann. David and I met with Dr. Tiemann a few days ago, earlier this week, and looked at the site and suggested in our discussions we did find a duck blind very close to the proposed site, and we had some discussions about an alternate site. So Dr. Tiemann, if you want to sort of take it from there.
Yeah, we looked at a site a little closer to Landing Lane, probably another 30, 40 yards, would you say? Closer to Landing Lane?
Yeah, maybe a little more.
And it also...
Closer to the other street, Shipwreck.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm using the shipyard.
Sorry.
Towards the other end of towards the school, which is the thing I know. And there's also, it's a rockier area. There are some decent sized rocks in the water already that would be something a kayak would avoid, which I know is one of the concerns. And that would also, that site would be fine. My only concern at this point is going back to the DEC and saying, okay, now we're changing sites. Personally, I think that site is as good, if not better. And one of the original sites we had right around the bend would also be fine. We're not married to that site as this has to be here. We want to make it somewhere where everybody is comfortable and we're not infringing on duck hunting, kayaking. This should be something that in the future people just say, oh, it's part of nature here. It's not supposed to be a new input. It's more focused on getting the bay back to what it was, not.
Bob, I have a couple of pictures that might be helpful to show so the rest of the board sees what we're talking about. So this is a shot, a map with the two proposed locations, the original location and the alternate that we took a look at from a bit of a distance. So the proposed sites are the yellow blurbs with the stars in them, these two. And then the little house figures show the location of duck blinds in the area. And the red line is the DEC shellfish closure line. And the blue dot with Gobler Station 6 is the end of Shipyard Lane, where Dr. Gobler takes one of his samples every year, every season. And I also have another shot. Did that change to a closer shot?
It did, John.
All right, so that's close up. So Reef B, the figure labeled Reef B, is the original proposed spot, and the figure Reef A is the spot we thought might be more appropriate. It's in between the duck blind location to the north and the moorings that are near Shipyard Lane to the south. And if you see on the map, there's a little bit of a dip in the shoreline there. So that might bring the whole reef a little bit closer to shore and farther away from the navigable part of that little creek area.
Yeah. Barley and I were talking this morning, and if you think about a natural reef, the reef as they appear in nature, they're in the intertidal zone. They're not submerged in all tides. I know, like aesthetically, I'm assuming that people don't want to see this, but most reef restorations have been in that intertidal zone, and it would probably be less of a hazard because it's visible, and also it would be closer to the shore, so you wouldn't be worried about boat traffic as much. I'm not sure if having it covered at low tide is the wisest thing, also for the growth of the reef itself. By exposing it to the air for a few hours a day, it's actually going to help keep away some of the fouling organisms that tend to hurt oyster production.
Bob, one thing we discussed when we were out there was the DC is requiring some additional information, and I think it would be beneficial for us to wait for that information too, and that's the depth of water as you progress offshore there, and and then that would define or inform the exact location of the reef off the edge of the marsh, which they're also looking for. And I think we should probably, before we actually make it, vote to approve on this, we should have all that information as well. So.
Agreed, and I'm working on that for the DEC now. But my question now then would be, would the DEC, it's going to take some convincing for them to have a reef that's closer to shore in a more natural setting. I don't know why their regulations are like that, but if I can convince them that closer to shore would be better, is that something that the trustees would also support? I don't want to bother with that discussion with the DEC if the trustees are not on board with that.
Well, I would tend to agree with your argument that having the reef visible, at least in some tides, wouldn't be detrimental. It might be an advantage to the concerns that we had for people running into it inadvertently. I don't know, maybe some other trustees think about that and weigh in on that.
Yeah, it seemed like a good spot compared to in front of the duck blind. There's some rocks there that would kind of blend in. And it's a little bit closer to, the school. So one of the goals is to have students involved. So that'll be a little bit closer. And, maybe if down the road it becomes people are bumping into it, we put up a buoy or a sign we're talking about that explains what is going on, that it's what this kind of the science behind it.
I think the South Fork Sea Farmers will be fine getting a sign, because it really is something that we could put an educational sign up, not a huge sign, but something that says, this is why this is here. This is what it's doing for our environment. In just a few sentences.
What is the distance from the duck blind to this new location?
To the new I can tell you right now that to the old location on the map here, it's about 32 feet from the edge of the grass. And the duck blind's further in than the edge of the grass. So if that's 32 feet, we've probably got 100 feet, 110.
Okay.
Somewhere in that area.
That's the original location, the
This is
distance
the-
between the proposed reef and the duck blind on shore.
Right.
And the proposed location is, I would say, I don't know, maybe 50 yards or more south of the original proposed location. In fact, I measured this. I think from the end of landing lane, the shipyard lane, to the original location where the duck blind is, I think was 800 feet. So the proposed location is probably between 400 and 500 feet from the end of landing lane, shipyard lane.
Yeah, I just took the ruler, and there's a 300-foot measurement on the bottom of this map, which is about 2.5 inches, which is about how far those two stars are apart. So about 300 feet from the duck blind.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, is that nice hard bottom? Is it gravelly?
No, it's not. It's not rock gravel, but it's maybe an inch or two of silt, but so much better than the other side, which was a foot of silt. The other side is hard to walk in. So it was, and the closer you get to shore, the firmer it is.
Gotcha. So the silt could really be a problem with the oyster survivability too. So I'm glad to hear that there's less of it there for you. And I think when it comes to the intertidal, you'll want to have the oysters, in a combined fashion between at very low tide. You'll want some underwater still and some visible up on the shoreline a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm working on for the state also, and first thing I'll do now is ask them about the change in site. That'll be my first step with them. Which shouldn't be a big deal. It's not far, but you never know.
In my experience, the harder bottom, the better. So anything you can do to stay away from the silt, because that could really swallow them up.
Yeah, and then the bottom layer, remember, is blank shell. That's part of the reason for that bottom layer is just to get everything else up. And then our spat-on shell will be on the second layer.
Bob, I just want to have it clear in my mind that if in fact you do, when you go and probe this site, find that it is softer than you thought,
Mm-hmm.
comfortable enough that the construction of the reef will be able to hold the weight without sinking into the
Right.
bottom, or might you be looking for a different site if in fact you do find a soft bottom there?
If that bottom is softer than the original site, I'd probably look at, we had originally given two other alternatives. I'd probably look at those. Actually, also, there's two duck blinds on the map you put, and there's a little indent in between those two. That might be a site to explore also.
The duck blind around the corner headed towards Landing Lane, I don't think it's in, well, it may be near your third proposed site that's closest to Landing Lane.
Right.
It's not clear from the map that we have in the office exactly where this duck blind is. It may be fairly high on the marsh. So I would just suggest that if you do, look for sites, just get a better idea from the office of the exact location of that duck blind so we don't, run into a potential conflict again.
Gotcha. All right, I'll concentrate on the site we looked at the other day and work with the DEC on that. And I'll go check it out this week and just really just walk into the bottom and make sure it's not softer than the original site.
Okay.
And then as soon as I make progress with the DEC, I will get back to you.
You're muted, Francis.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Tiemann.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
All right. The rest of the agenda tonight looks pretty weak, to say the least. Nothing on the new business unless somebody wants to bring something up. Okay, old business, nothing. Committee reports, harbor management, Little Northwest Creek dredging update. Jim?
That project, as everybody knows, was completed some time ago. Arlene, did we get payment from the state yet?
We've been processing it. Allison was in communication with them. So it seemed that it was a go. It was just a question of
Okay.
paperwork.
The,
So we'll check on that tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, the grant monies and stuff and all, and the paperwork were approved. We're just literally, the payment is imminent. We should have it any time.
And what was that? How much was that, Jim?
105.
105,000.
Yeah. 400.
105,000?
Yeah.
Very nice.
It was the same amount as the bill, Stream's bill for the work.
Mhm. Okay, great.
If you want, I can give you an update on Georgia.
Well, before we go there, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, I stopped in at Georgia today. They're pulling some sand off the beach. They re-let the pond today. Basically, the pond level had kind of creeped up where some of their excavated material was sort of trapped out at sea. So they're dropping the level of the pond, and I think they're going to probably work the balance of this week, and then they may take 1 week off out of there and be back to finish up.
The pond's been open all the time, pretty much?
No, the pond's been closed. They basically had closed it to be able to traverse across the flats. But what happened, Bill, is over time the water's kind of crept up. It's kind of flooded across. Some of the equipment can get across there, but you know what? Listen, if you don't have to run the equipment salt water, you're always better off. So.
Good.
All right. Pump out boat committee update. Jim, we met with the harbor master from Shelter Island about the possibility of contracting with them. You want to talk to with the board about that?
You know, has the rest of the board been been made aware of this?
No, we forgot to bring it up last meeting.
Okay,
So-
I wasn't sure. Anyway, Francis and I met with the harbor master over in Shelter Island, and what they're looking for is they got a little dilemma over there in that they have a need for pump out services, and we happen to have basically at this time an extra boat, and we all are also good on captains. So what they're looking for from the town of East Hampton is if we could perhaps rent them a boat and a operator to help mitigate some of the impacts over in Cockles Harbor. So we're going to Arlene and Allison put together our expenses, and basically we're coming up with a cost per day of what it costs to operate that boat. We're going to get back to them with a number. And if it's agreeable, certainly we'd be coming back to the board for their input and hopefully their support on this.
Yeah. They just wanted to, what, Thursday? Friday,
Yeah,
Saturday,
they're looking for, I think it's 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week.
There's
And
31 boats over there.
Yeah. One of the sort of things there is the ability for the operator to offload at their end. And that was something that was questionable. If it was a case where, our guy fills up, he has no place to unload, he's forced to go back to 3 Mile Harbor to unload, we would have to, at that point, certainly talk to the town about, because there's an expense attached to the town for this. They pay for the pump out of those tanks. And it was a time. I really felt that you'd lose so much time, basically probably lose at least an hour and a half to 2 hours screwing around doing that. It doesn't make much of a day.
He seemed to be pretty confident that they can arrange with the marina over there that's nearby. Now, this would take place in Cockles Harbor, just so you all know.
We're also thinking that 3 Mile Harbor does get a little slow sometimes, so it might fit in.
Yeah, well, that's what we were thinking, and we're different from what we've had the last couple of years. We actually have a good group of people to run the boats and stuff right now. We're not scrambling for operators.
Jim, is that just going to be Cockles Harbor or all of the whole island?
No, just Cockles.
Just one section of Cockles, even just the
moorings.
Yeah, their mooring field over there.
They don't do the transients on the anchor over around in there?
Well, that's what it would be.
It would be them too.
Yeah, it would be the transients in the mooring field.
You know, we're trying to keep the whole Acabanics clean. It's something that's worth exploring, see if it works out.
Yeah.
Give
Sounds
them a
good.
number and see what they say.
They apparently get a lot of transients from Sag Harbor, East Hampton. So
We think Southampton has a similar agreement with them for another harbor over there.
Gearing Harbor, I believe.
This might fit in nice, so we have to explore a little more.
Do they have any type of service in place right now whatsoever, or they offer no pump outs?
Nothing. I think there's some. You'd have to go to a private marina. There's nothing. There's no pump out boat service.
Well, there is. Hey, Chris, I think to answer your question, yes, there is a service of pull up to the marina, and you can get pumped out. But there's no like to your door service or actual mooring service.
Any thoughts?
I just have are we factoring in wear and tear on the equipment?
It's all part, John, that's all part of it. Okay, we're factoring in our insurance, our maintenance and repair, our winterization, and the other expenses attached to these boats on a given year.
And this would be the third boat, or this would be just the 3 Mile Harbor boat?
It might be the third, but we're going to see how this makes sense. We're approaching it right now, more or less, John, as the third boat, the old boat, as the one that would be used. But we don't know. As Bill mentioned earlier, 3 Mile has a tendency to be kind of slow. If it was a case where it made any sense at all to pull that 3 Mile Harbor boat and run it back and forth, we would certainly do that and then keep the older boat in reserve.
And you might have mentioned this. This is only weekends. Is that true?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I believe. At the end of the day, so it wouldn't be an all-day
Beginning
thing.
of the day.
Sounds great too, but we would just need a plan in place if
Now, listen,
our
we
new-
gotta,
new boats
Ben,
broke down.
this is one of those things. There's the logistics of serving this thing. Second to that is the financial aspect of this. I mean, this has got to it's got to cover our expenses and put in a cushion in there. You have to figure in, our long-term replacement costs and stuff. Honestly, I look at this as a bit of modeling for what may come down the road at some point. It may very well be a case where at some point in time, these services would be charged for. If the funding dynamic changes at some point, I think if we were going to continue to provide this service, we would have to re-examine how it's done.
Have you thought about or looked into how this dovetails or doesn't dovetail with the terms of the boat purchases?
Well, we did discuss that a little bit, and that would be perhaps the thing that pushes it into the third boat. That third boat we've had for years. We've maintained that boat. And I think, John, to your point, I think it very much would dovetail into the intention of these purchases to begin with. We're not looking at this as a money-making thing, but because we're going from one township to another, we do have to cover our expenses. But the whole point of these boats was the improvement of water quality in our bays. And even though Cockles is not directly part of our bays, it's certainly part of the Acabanic system.
Yeah.
we've been pulling monies from the CPF fund to support this. We pull monies from the state of New York. We're not running this boat to Connecticut.
Yeah, it's like 4.7 miles, I think. From it's not a huge
I
distance.
just wouldn't want, the fact that we're in effect renting out our boat to compromise the grant.
No, we wouldn't want to. The third boat is ours, like pretty much free and clear to do whatever we want. But the grants run for 6 or 7 years, I think, and after that, your obligations are gone.
And Shelter Island, I believe, is getting some grant assistance from the Acabanic Estuary Program. And
Yeah, they did say they had some
and the
funding to
state.
support this.
It's actually the same people that we got our grant money for on that boat.
So, it's an interesting idea they came to us with, and we're exploring it, and it looks like it has potential.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea too. To John's point, maybe you can offer it as a one season trial basis and kind of circle
Well,
the wagons.
Chris, that's the
Let's see where
approach
it's
we're taking on this because we had a very nice discussion, but we haven't got to the nitty gritty of the expense and whether it makes sense. They're in the sort of an awkward situation is they don't have enough use to warrant the purchase of a boat at this time, but they do have a need. And if we can satisfy that need, at the same time, we're improving the water quality numbers. I'll tell you, anytime you have a piece of equipment that's just sitting idle, there's almost more wear and tear on that thing than if you had it out working.
I definitely agree with you there, Tim.
Yeah, because you get these boats where there's that boat sitting out of the water, those pumps, the seals, the diaphragms, everything starts to dries out. The best thing would be to putting material through them. So I kind of look at it this way: it is our backup unit, and the best way to make sure that our backup boat is basically seaworthy and ready to go to work is if you're continuing to work it.
Have it working, yeah.
Yeah. And, for me, it's just a matter of this. Is it going to make sense from an expense standpoint? Because, the one thing I've learned over the last 2 seasons, these boats do not operate free of cost. There's a pretty considerable expense there, both in between your fuel, between the insurance, and between claims, deductible claims on our insurance, paying our captains, paying the maintenance on the boat, paying the winterization on the boats. It's something that's real and it's measurable. We're coming up on St. Patty's Day parade. We want to pull a boat out, strip the plastic off, put it in the parade for a day, and then get it re-wrapped. That's an expense.
But it is St. Patrick's Day.
Bill, you're so right. Yes. We've got to maintain the community spirit, but that community spirit comes at an expense.
We have to paint the bottom green too, Jim, and then repaint it probably.
Well, actually, Ben, you're no longer the junior guy. Dave is.
Uh-huh.
So, listen, Dave, Tyvek suit.
I've got the paint.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's tradition, Dave.
Actually, the new boat hasn't gotten wet yet, from what I
No, it hasn't. Although, yes, it had, because the boat was full of water.
sea trials. We should think about putting a sign on it thanking the people that provided the grant money maybe for the parade.
That's not a bad idea.
Mhm.
Because, I think the general public has no idea how this happens.
This boat was provided with the Community Preservation Fund, the state of New York.
I think that's a
Trustees.
really good idea.
Mhm.
I can make that up for you guys if you'd like and get that taken care of.
Okay. Just make sure you got the inventory on 3 Mile Harbor, Acabanic, Haynes Creek, and Georgia the Dumb before you start doing that.
Oh, you guys just wait. You're all going to get assignments and be told what to do by me. It's going to be so fun. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
When do you guys have a meeting set with Shelter Island again, or what's the next step?
No time sent. We actually, what happened is some things came up in my life, some things came up in Francis's. So we're about a week short of when we thought we'd get back to him. So
Yes, so we have to present a proposal to him as long as you guys are okay with that.
yeah.
That's moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Go for it. A lot of East Hampton residents spend quite a bit of time in Cockles anyway. So
Mhm.
I think it makes sense.
Okay. All right. Well, we're down to administrative. Anybody want to bring anything up before we go there?
Did we want to talk about any legal matters?
Well, I was going to do that report of the clerk, but we can go
Okay.
there.
That's good. Whatever.
All right. So administrative, we have payment of the bills, Optimum, $151.65. And $41 of Staples, $41.98.
I'd like to make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have financials for the month ending January 31st, 2022. Has anybody had a chance to review them?
I was looking over them when during the meeting here. They seem to be in order. Heck, it's the first month of the year. There's not a whole lot to report on.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion, we accept the financials then.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so report of the clerk. Last meeting, we agreed to hire Dan Spitz's firm to represent us on the beach lawsuits. And with that, we're going to have to meet with him in executive session to discuss the plan. He's available Wednesday, Friday, or next Monday. What's the availability with the board?
What time, Francis?
It would be after 5.
Wednesday is good for me.
Yeah, Wednesday works for me as well. Wednesday works.
Yep, sounds good.
I can do Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday will be good.
John, you're good with it?
So, yeah.
Okay, Wednesday it is.
What time, Francis?
What do you want, 5, 5:30?
5.
5's good.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Great. Allison, can you host that?
I can't this Wednesday. I'm teaching, unfortunately. I can set it up and see if
Yeah,
I know.
I can
I'm
host
so
it, no
sorry.
problem. Yeah.
Arlene can
Like
host
one
it?
time, right? But I
Yeah.
can set it up and everything for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is Dan going to be,
Thanks.
Dan's going to be there also, right?
I'm sorry?
Dan is going to be present?
Yes, yeah, that's the whole purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Dan, actually, Francis, or Dan could host.
Dan can host it. His system, I find a little more tedious.
It's not
Okay.
really difficult for us to host it.
All right.
I
Now
hope you
listen.
guys
All
don't
right.
feel that way.
Is
It's
it a
safe
Zoom?
for $3 maybe.
Is it Zoom or is it just a conference call?
Zoom.
Zoom? Okay.
Yeah, he uses WebEx. I don't know about you guys, but I find that a little tedious.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I agree.
All right. Anybody have anything else before we go?
Well, I just have a question. Have you
Sure.
heard anything from the town about whether we'll be able to meet in person next meeting?
A memo went out today about masks where we no longer need to wear them inside the town buildings. And it referenced that we will soon be meeting in person. I'm anticipating like the 15th. That will change.
All right, that'd be great.
Mhm. So where would that bring us? We have a meeting on the 14th.
Maybe we will be able to meet in person by the.
Yeah, maybe we could do it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Anybody else?
Hey, the only thing I would like to say is, guys, some of you probably know my dad passed away this past week, and I wanted to thank my fellow board members, Allison and Arlene, for the support I got. It meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to my family. Bill, thank you for coming by. Allison, Arlene, I know it was a tough week for a lot of people because people were away in that, but
hey, music, because of Montauk legend.
hey, I'm going to miss him.
I bet.
Yeah.
Jim, I got a nice care package dropped off at my house that was supposed to go to his house today.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how they managed that one, but
I don't know. It had our address on it, but
yeah. Well, listen, hey, maybe he was thinking of you guys too,
All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to close. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Night, guys.